Hello and welcome. My name is Edie Lush. It is an absolute pleasure to be here collaborating with Open to Debate. It's a knowledge partner of the Future Investment Initiative Institute, and we are coming live to you from Riyadh. Open to Debate is America's leading debate organization, and its goal here today is to prove that debate does not have to be a bad thing or divisive. Not all argument is bad, and some argument can be constructive. We're here to have a constructive discussion. Who knows, it may get a little bit heated. We have a format called Unresolved, where our panel will answer yes or no to a series of 3 questions, followed by a conversation on where and why they disagree. So we are recording this session for the Open to Debate podcast and our weekly NPR program, which will be airing nationwide in the United States next month. And today we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence. We'll be teasing out the art in artificial intelligence. Personally, I feel an internal tension as AI creeps and sometimes barges into my job. As a journalist and a host, I spend a lot of time making creative connections between ideas, people, and audiences. And AI is often a lifesaver, making my content easier, making writing easier, more interesting. And yet I also feel uncomfortable sometimes with the pace of change. And I do wonder how long I'm going to be relevant and how long my skills might be needed. But I also recognize that wrestling with my own cognitive dissonance on this particular area can be helpful. So I know if I'm able to harness AI, I'll be able to raise my creative game and set my sights even higher. So I'm excited that our debaters here today are going to bring some clarity, not just to me, but to this issue in general. Let me introduce our debaters to you. We have Tom Graham, the CEO of Metaphysic AI, a leading company in providing production houses the AI tools that they need to enhance their movies. Next up, Bob Simonds over there. We have the founder and chairman of STX Entertainment, an independent entertainment and media company, and a prolific film producer as well. Coming back here, Claude Grunitzky, CEO and managing partner of the Equity Alliance, an investment company, and the founder of 2 Africa-focused media companies. And Yat Su, co-founder and executive chairman of Animoca Brands, a game software and venture capital company with a focus on blockchain gaming and NFTs. So we are going to start with a question diving into the heart of creativity. AI art often requires training machines on what already exists: poems, paintings, music, human facial and vocal likenesses, and beyond. We see the problem with this highlighted, especially in copyright law, struggles around the world, but I want us to get to something different. Be ready with your signs, gentlemen. Our question is AI content wholly original? So, Tom, are you a yes or a no?
No.
Okay. Claude, what about you?
I'm a yes.
Okay. All right. Bob, what about you?
I unfortunately am a no.
Okay, a no. And Yat?
I'm a yes.
Okay. Right. So I'd like, Claude, we'll start with you. Explain your answer.
So for me, the reason I'm a yes is I don't look at AI and originality and creativity now. I look at what it's going to become. Mm-hmm. And I feel like these models are evolving so fast that the way that we harness the information that comes out of these large language models is going to lead to such a level of originality and creativity that it's only going to enhance the potential for creative collaboration so that the artist is no longer in a silo, but actually feeding off of the wisdom of crowds. Mm-hmm. And so the yes is really more looking at the future versus the choice points that we face right now.
Okay. Bob, what about you? Why are you a no?
So coming from Hollywood, we have this premise that art has a soul. And when I look at what's going on with AI, it's essentially scraping data sources that already exist. Otherwise, you don't have AI. So it's by definition, taking other people's images and thoughts and art and fulfilling a user's request. I'd add to that I come from a very narrow world where when you create content, when you create art, can you protect that with copyright, which right now you can't,
Right.
because it doesn't have a human behind it. But more importantly, you want the copyright so that you can charge people for it. Because unlike true artists, we make stuff so that we can get paid. And we don't care how many people see it, we care how many people pay to see it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Why are you a yes?
Well, I think if you think about what AI can do, AI actually can create entirely new paradigms and new content in areas that we haven't seen before. Like AlphaGo is a good example of that, where it created entirely new Go moves that even the grandmaster at the time didn't have an answer to, right? Before we looked at chess as sort of the pinnacle of AI, but chess is quite deterministic. All the moves can be predicted. But actually, in some ways, the game of Go is a form of inspiration and a kind of creativity that you would normally only expect in humans. And basically to your point, it's also where will it go? Because new content is created through AI, not from human inspiration, that will then actually be the body of work that will come. Basically, AIs are training AIs already, and therefore I do believe that we've seen glimpses today where AI content is wholly original, but in the future, I think a lot more AI content will be very much original.
Okay. All right. Finally, Tom, what about you? You're a no.
So I think I'm a no, but making essentially the same point as yeah. Today we create a lot of content with AI, and behind that is a human making those decisions. It's being used as a tool. It's not generating the art itself. It's not coming up with that original spark of creativity. But I can certainly see in the future moving towards AI models that can do the brain, create the art, as well as, say, the visual elements, the beauty of it, right? Bring those two things together. Today, in all of the things that we do, people are using this AI as tools to enhance their creativity. So that's why I'm a no, but certainly the future, yes.
All right. So we're going to move to our discussion section of this particular round. I heard something interesting in all of you, but I heard, Bob, you were nodding when I could hear when Yat was talking about AI being quite creative around Go. So I wondered if there was something in that make you change your mind, or did you want to respond?
No, I actually agree with what he's saying. I'm coming from a very specific point of view, which is the art being created is it original? Meaning, is it the way I look at AI right now, maybe in the future it's different, but where it is right now is the data that it's scraping, that's again fulfilling this
Right.
request, consciously or unconsciously, it's neither. So for me, in art, whatever the form of art is, there's usually an artist struggling with something based on his experience, his unique worldview, his cultural perspective. And I think that's actually a very important part of what drives originality. But again, once AI starts dictating what AI is doing, then it's exactly where, then I'm wrong.
Yeah, and maybe if I can respond to that as well. I think the question isn't, is AI content better than human content, for instance, right? Or is AI content sort of an example of AI consciousness? Those are totally different things. So to the question, is AI content original, or can it be original? I think that is a much more clear question in terms of when AI generates content of its own and then it uses that on top. I mean, that's kind of what human inspiration is, right? When you look at a painting, as a human, you're inspired by it. That doesn't mean you're copying it. In your mind, you're not processing it as I want to copy the Mona Lisa and do that. The idea was inspired to create something, and it generated some content. That content generated someone else's content. Over history, there's a sort of tree of inspirations that came out that are technically all original, and I view AI somewhat in the same way.
Derivatives are always more interesting than the original.
I have to
Claude.
disagree
All
and
right.
push back, because I don't think of it in terms of content. To me, when I think of content, it has a bit of a negative connotation. When I think of being on a panel around AI and creativity, I think of Mona Lisa masterpieces. And to me, I don't put it in the same category as content, and I think we have to kind of draw the line. The way that I'm thinking about harnessing the power of AI is, I'm going to give an example of a friend who's one of the greatest figurative painters of our time, Kehinde Wiley. So he paints these incredible portraits of mostly black people, but in the style of the Renaissance painters like a Tiepolo from the Venice School. And I think that AI, being able to really kind of look at the iconography that came out of the Venice School can inform the research and creative process that will allow him to create better masterpieces. But when I think of content, I'm just thinking of TikToks and just consumer culture of things that we consume really quickly, but that don't have the value of rising to the level of masterpieces, which is what I'm leading with.
So I would agree with you that maybe AI doesn't necessarily have the masterpiece potential, maybe, depending on who knows in the future.
Yeah.
But I think AI being able to do something original doesn't equate to value, at least in the way that I'm thinking about it. Because, an elephant, for instance, can be given a paintbrush and they draw all sorts of whatever that may be. It may not have a lot of value, but I think we can say that it is original because an elephant painted it. Whether there was great conscious effort or a masterpiece, to me, is kind of the same thing as an AI maybe being primitive, but it still is original.
Right, but and I don't want to hog the mic, but I just want to maybe respond just really quickly. On the subject of originality, when we were talking earlier with Tom, you were saying about maybe a third of the content that is created on TikTok, these videos have AI music that was generated really by AI behind the scenes, and no one really pays attention to them because it's just in the background. I'm thinking more of the experience of being at the Louvre, in that room, with the Mona Lisa or Venus de Milo, and having a really, really strong inspirational moment that is much more than just going through the motions of consuming content. That's kind of like what I wanted to clarify.
Tom, do you want to expand on that TikTok point?
Yeah, so because in our business we have been kind of creating AI realistic identities of people, and these are like deep fakes from the very, very beginning, 2017 through to now. And for the longest time on all of the internet, I could always tell what was fake content, especially anything to do with people. It was earlier this year, around January, where I saw some videos on social media and I couldn't tell whether that was real or not. And so I had to then go and Google to see if this story was real. Since then, there are different types of AI-generated content which are there. Some are designed to deceive, some are for fun, but it has really proliferated. And so there is large amounts of kind of the content, all the different bits that come together, being generated like that, and they go under the radar. No one's really processing it. And so there's definitely a different threshold between high art, things that we want to look at, and things that just happen to us as we're consuming media in the background or somewhere. But the degree to which content is constituent, built from AI, is going to increase rapidly. And so our lives will be filled with this AI stuff in the background, this white noise of AI. And I don't know what that means, for all kinds of things, society, etc.
Let's move on to our second question now about the diversity of AI-generated art. What happens when the developers of AI are biased towards Western art and culture, and when the AI is primarily fed Western content? Does non-Western culture become subsumed as AI art ramps up? So be ready with your signs. Is Western culture destined to dominate AI art? What do you think?
No, for me.
Okay. Have you already turned?
Yes, unless it changes.
Okay.
No.
All right, there we go. So let's have a chat about why.
So I think dominating AI art, I think about the people who are creating art, and I find that areas in the world, cultures around the world which are not Anglo-English speaking cultures are far more attuned to using these types of tools, generally more adoptive of new technologies. And so I think that leads to probably a proliferation of the usage of it, the more creation of it. And we certainly see that China, Korea, even in the movie industry, Bollywood is much more open to experimentation and new technologies than, say, traditional Hollywood. So I think that's my answer. It's just the weight of who is using it.
Okay. What about you, Claude? You're on the yes side.
I'm on the yes side, and I completely disagree with my friend Tom here because the problem, and one of the reasons I come to conferences like this is because as an African, I feel like I have to be the voice, one of the voices of the global South, and many of us Africans moving through this world, we have to learn other people's languages, mostly Western languages. So I had to learn French, I had to learn English, then I learned Spanish, and then I learned Portuguese. No one cares about my language in Togo, Ewe, which is a really important language, an ancestral language that is rooted in traditions of creativity. None of that shows up in these large language models. And that bias is going to worsen the situation that we're facing, which is this extreme digital divide where people from the global south get excluded from the AI conversation. And it has all kinds of ramifications that could lead to all kinds of social chaos going forward for humanity. So I'm not going to be presenting a doomsday scenario here, but I'm very worried about how non-Western cultures are being excluded by these rapid advances in AI.
Okay. Yat, you are no. Tell me why.
Yeah, well, first, when we talk about culture broadly in the world, first of all, I don't think it's Western dominated. If you look at, for instance, Japanese anime, K-pop, K-drama, stuff that's going on in China around the world, these are great examples about how, arguably in a Western dominated narrative world where English is the predominant language globally, you still have cultural narratives from outside of the world, un-American or un-Western, that are taking over the world. So that's kind of the first point. The second one is that AI is actually locked in different countries. So for instance, in the greater China region, Hong Kong and China, which is basically, like, sort of one seventh or 1/8 of the world population is locked out of Western AI. You can't access OpenAI, for instance, not because China doesn't want it, but because the US has sanctioned it, as an example. That means all of the content that's produced domestically is actually subject to local type of AI content. I also believe that, also, when you look at content and culture around the world, it's already, especially in America, so completely fused and confused, maybe, depending, whether it's fusion food or whether it's different type of content or all these kind of cultural archetypes that are brought into basically movie business or books, for instance. So I think we'll gravitate towards the type of AI content that we're already culturally connected to, and therefore I don't think it's Western culture. In fact, I think what is Western culture even, right?
All right, well, what is Western culture? It doesn't get more Western culture than Hollywood, Bob.
Yeah, so I will, I'm going to probably, I agree with Claude on this one, and I'm going to probably expand on some of what he was getting at, which is, look, in Hollywood, we used to export culture all over the world. And I think this is actually the single most important question that's being asked at the conference, which is something that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, which is, we used to say that MTV brought down the Berlin Wall, which is get your culture in there, get your way of thinking in there, and you essentially evolve them to be like you. That's not a good thing. And I think that people, if asked, understand that each individual culture is special. And in fact, I've got a company that's actually trying to be the antidote to homogenization of AI, partly because culturally, what is being scraped right now is predominantly English. And we communicate our values and what's important to us in English. So right now, if you're communicating with many of these chat models, you're getting a Western bias.
Right.
Now, hopefully this changes. But if it doesn't change, that becomes the bias.
So I'm really interested. Let's move to the discussion now. How can we use AI to counter the hegemony? How can we use it to bring in the culture of Togo, to all of the African languages, the dialects that exist within Arabic, for example? I'm looking towards our investors on this panel. In fact, it's pretty much all of you. Are there ways that we could see AI used to make it better?
I think that something that's really interesting about how you build these models is you can train it one time off a set of data, and that's going to set up a set of biases. For instance, really interestingly, the original data sets used to train style transfer GANs to create human faces, they skewed in interesting ways. There was basically no one from Africa in there, but if you tried to move down to babies, it was Asian babies. And moving up to older people, it was older Asian women, like, predominated inside these data sets.
I didn't know that.
No, me neither.
Yeah. You can take these data sets, you can train them one time, and then you can continue to train on top of them. I think that the larger question about bias and how we can move diversity is more the product decisions made by tech guys inside large companies around the world, more than the algorithm. What products do they build?
So for me, I see the potential really when you look at the sort of pre-AI wave, it was UGC. User-generated content was really the remixing of all sorts of cultures coming together and then basically creating new narratives. I mean, who knew that watching people eat food on YouTube was actually a worthy program, right? I mean, back then I remember there were early investors in a company called Machinima, and they were basically creating sort of basically movie content inside video games, which was a subculture at the time. And everyone was like, who's going to watch basically video game content? That's what everyone does on Twitch now, right? For example. And so these new formats are created because users are so fascinated by this new type of content that I guess the traditional way couldn't imagine, because everything had to be a production and had to be produced in a certain way, right? And so now with AI, we can do this even faster. So we may look at TikTok and say, you know what, that's not very creative. That's probably true. 99% of that content is not very creative. However, there's a 1 or 2% of that content that someone actually uses the technology that they couldn't do before. Like maybe they didn't know how to draw, or maybe they didn't know how to sing, but suddenly they can do that and express an idea that they couldn't do before. So I actually think that it becomes more powerful. And I think the intermixing of cultures will become even deeper because we can now finally express it and reach an audience that we couldn't do before.
Are you inspired by this, Claude? Is this helping you out?
I'm inspired and I'm hopeful, but I'm also very much rooted in reality and what I see as somebody who spent his entire career promoting the information industries and the creative industries coming from the global south, specifically Africa, with a real bias on black culture, is that, whether it's TikTok, that content, or Instagram, or YouTube, or whatever, again, these are Western or Eastern platforms, whatever we define them, that are, again, not owned by anybody in the global south. And so we're just basically the product that is being amplified by these other Western and I guess Chinese platforms. And the problem for me is that Africans are very proud when their films are shown on Netflix, and they're really proud when their content is shown on YouTube or whatever. But what about finding a way for us to create our own platforms that will disseminate our content with pride, as opposed to just looking for the validation of the Western world? So that's been the fight, and I think that unfortunately AI is not helping, but hurting, is my point earlier.
Maybe one thing I want to respond is that this was a problem we had in Asia for a long time. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, we absolutely had basically sort of Western culture anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Everything in we're eating McDonald's and we were looking basically at Hollywood movies. That was and all these ideas. But I think America's soft power is very much driven by Hollywood.
Yes.
I think it comes from that, right? Yeah. And I also think America's weakening soft power is the fact that the rest of the global cultures are meshing together. And it took Asia probably 30 years to get to where it is today. Whether you talk about Japanese or Korean, I mean, look at anime, for instance. It's a global phenomenon. Or look at K-pop. It's a global phenomenon, right? These are things that actually have taken over, but have taken a while to get there. So maybe that could be a hopeful story for African content.
We live in hope. Tom, what's your take on this?
I think that to that soft power question, these AI tools give cultures that are not Western culture, not Hollywood, means of distribution really for that culture. And so maybe trying to think about how to move different cultures out there, increasing the distribution pathways. And so like you've got to make the content quickly, you've got to find a way to move it around. That I think is to the point where like, I haven't thought about it before in terms of a weakening of soft culture being a function of that. But certainly one of the blockades to distribution is how fast can you make the content?
Okay.
Can I just say one quick thing?
In 2 seconds.
50. My friends in Accra were celebrating when Google opened the AI lab in Accra. Oh, Ghana, we have an AI lab. But I said, it's great that Google is investing in Ghana, but what about a homegrown African company focused on AI? Why can't we dream about that?
Okay, all right, we're going to move to our third and final debate question. That is the value of AI-generated art. Art made by conventional human means has long been a source of financial and cultural value. So I'm very curious to hear whether you all think AI art holds the same promise for financial investors. So we're going to turn them all at once. Green for yes, red for no. Would you invest in AI art today? Okay.
Wow.
Yat, why would you invest in AI art?
Well, that doesn't look too good for my Rafiqs and other stuff like that, based on this panel. But generally speaking, to me, we're at when I look at art, they are to me representing the moment of the time that we're in, right? So whether this is Renaissance Italy, whether this is Ming Dynasty, right? It means something to have a piece of history. And we're in the age of AI. And even if the AI art is primitive today, if we agree that this is the age of AI and it's going to be the thing that we talk about in the future as the birthplace of large language models and the inspiration and everything, then I think AI art is a good investment because maybe not short term, but long term, that's basically something we can say, I was there. And with blockchain, we can also prove that this AI art is actually something that is unique with this provenance, which we see with NFTs.
All right, you're doing a good job talking your own book. Bob, you're a no.
I'm a no only because, again, I hate to be the obvious Hollywood producer, but money clarifies. And our job is to create art that you can sell and make money on. And right now, whatever's being generated can't be copyrighted. So you can't prove a chain of title, which means you can't sell it, which means you can't make money on it. Full stop.
My therapist would say it's a very good job to live in the present, so thank you for living in the present. Claude, what about you?
So I don't want to live in the present. I only want to think of the future because I think this present is really scary and I'm not loving what I see in the present. So if I'm going to be hopeful, the reason I would invest in AI art today is once again looking into the future and thinking and seeing things through the eyes of my son who's going to turn 7 next week. When I take him to museums, I mean, I'm a trustee at 2 major museums, Mass MoCA and MoMA PS1 in New York. He's not interested in any of that. But I can see how in 20 or 25 years, he's going to be engaging with the kind of AI art that is only in its infancy, and that's what he's going to be excited about.
And gaming is a good example.
And of course,
that.
gaming is a conduit to that.
Right. So, Tom.
I think I said no in general because of a proliferation of it, right? And there might be a little bit of a bubble there, so maybe that'll level out. But certainly the artists that have broken through where there is that consensus, like Rafiq and others, that it is good art, that transcends the idea whether it's AI generated or AI assisted in any way. I would invest in those for sure.
I think we have to talk about gaming here because that is where we see AI arts getting so much traction. Give us a little bit about why, and also give us some hope that actually artists might be able to get paid for it yet.
Well, I mean, very quickly, there's 3.4 billion people in the world who play games. Obviously, the kingdom is a big number of the youth all here. I think 86% of the youth in the kingdom actually play games. And so that's the cultural expression of their time. In the same way that people used to still watch Hollywood movies or go to TV, they would buy artifacts and collectibles based on these forms of art expressions, or artists take pop culture that are inspired by the movies or by the news of their time. That's gaming today. And so ask your child, what is the thing that they really want? It's going to be a gaming-related item that then becomes artistic in its expression as well down the road.
Right.
They're informed by that culture.
Okay. Tom, do you want to come back on that?
Largely agree. I've been kind of playing games with my friends for 20 years, and when it became interactive, it was amazing. You could be there with your friends, you're chatting, you're interacting. The layer that AI will bring on top of that is more immersive, realistic, deeply emotionally engaging interactions with your friends and people that you care about. That will drive exactly what you're talking about.
And just when you think about art, right, when you look at something, it's what you feel for it. And when there's many other people that are interacting with it, there's more of a feeling that is developed. And in gaming, because of its interaction, it's an even more powerful medium because thousands of people are interacting with it, creating their own stories. And that's why you buy art, because you're buying a story that's not necessarily just your own, but it's one that's co-created by everyone.
Yeah.
So for once, I'm not going to be a contrarian. I'm going to agree with everybody on this panel.
Oh, no!
Because a friend who's a curator at the Serpentine Museum, he was sharing with me the experience of the single most popular exhibition they ever had. And it was actually a gaming exhibition that was so participative that they had millions of people kind of diving into this exhibition from all over the world. And in any given moment, the best exhibition at the Serpentine Museum in London would have maybe 100,000 visitors. And so I think that the scale at which this gaming colliding with AI and art could actually change the game is something we have not even begun to scratch the surface of.
So it's interesting. Maybe I'm the odd man out here because I come from a business where we need to control the frame. You know, in gaming, it's about the experience and the adrenaline of making choices and moving forward. When you pay us money to essentially it's an emotional transaction. You pay me money and I'll make you laugh, I'll make you cry, I'll scare you, I'll adrenalize you. But there's a whole host of human emotions that I can take you on through a journey, but I have to control what you see and what you experience by controlling the frame. Can't do that in gaming, but I do think that one of the things we're experimenting with right now is how AI can help essentially with the narrative in that journey to start expanding the list of emotions that can be accessed.
Okay, our time on this particular journey is limited. That concludes our 3 rounds of debate. But before you all go, I have one final question for you. Rapid fire, rapid answer. I'm going to give you $1 million each. What is the one area of AI content creation you're going to put it into? Yat, where are you going to put your 1 million?
I would put it in AI art.
Okay. NFTs in particular?
Basically, NFTs. Also, primarily because that's actually the way to your question. How do you prove that you own something digital that is AI generated? That is NFTs.
Okay. Bob, how about you?
I'm doing it, putting it into story, using AI to help people unlock the story that they have inside of themselves so that it becomes a muse to their inspiration as opposed to doing it for them.
Claude.
I would use that $1 million to fund a feature film that will be created via AI by people from all over the world without any sort of stratification or pecking order that would have us in the global south at the bottom and Hollywood at the top.
Okay, we've got someone from Hollywood to help. We've got someone with blockchain who can help. What about you, Tom?
I would disagree with Claude. I wouldn't put it into any kind of film budget because it's going to disappear.
Exactly.
But I think I would try to find ways to, if I had to use $1 million, capture as much data from my life and my life experiences as I can.
Wow.
Because that data I'm going to be able to use to recreate those experiences and have my memories, and that's one of my goals. Like, capture as much as I can and then find a way to store it. Storing data over 10 years is very, very difficult for regular individuals.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd spend it on.
I don't want to recreate my experiences. I'd rather forget the things that happened in the past.
So remember some, forget.
I don't know. I'm quite looking forward to uploading my consciousness to the internet. All right, I'm going to thank our debaters here, Thomas, Graham, Claude Grunitzky, Bob Simonds, and Yatsu. We so appreciate you showing up, approaching this debate with an open mind, and bringing your very thoughtful disagreement to the table. In short, being open to debate. So thank you for being here, and thank you, of course, to the FII for their collaboration on this initiative. The team at Open to Debate are honored to be your knowledge partners. And thank you from me as well.